Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and in this video, we will cover how you can find how much volume is best, specifically for you as an individual for maximum muscle growth. First and foremost, we need to define what exactly volume is. For hypertrophy training, volume refers to the number of sets performed per muscle group per week. However, each set of an exercise that can count towards weekly volume must achieve the following prerequisites to actually be effective at stimulating muscle growth. The first is a close proximity to failure. All sets should be taken around 1 to 2 reps before failure on average. This ensures that all motor units are recruited and all muscle fibers are actually trained. Heavier loads in the 6 to 12 rep range can use a further proximity from failure of around 1 to 3 reps in reserve, while lighter loads in the 12 to 20 rep range should be taken around 0 to 2 reps before failure. Second, the loads used should allow the trainee to lift somewhere in the 6 to 20 rep range. Lifting in the 1 to 5 rep range is great for strength gains, but doesn't provide enough mechanical tension to maximize muscle growth. And the third factor that should be considered before counting a set towards volume is technique. Each set should be performed with strict technique, where the target muscle is the limiting factor. Assuming these 3 prerequisites are met, then the set can count towards volume. Now let's establish the general volume-hypertrophy relationship. Hypertrophy seems to follow an inverted U-shaped relationship with increasing volume. This means that more volume results in greater muscle growth up to a point, and then more volume beyond this point results in less hypertrophy. So essentially there is a theoretical volume that allows the maximum amount of hypertrophy for each muscle group. Certain points in the volume-hypertrophy relationship can be defined by landmarks. Thanks to Dr. Mike Israetel from Renaissance Periodization, the following landmarks can be applied. First is maintenance volume. This refers to the number of weekly sets that results in a maintenance of muscle mass. So this level of volume doesn't result in any muscle growth, it simply allows the trainee to maintain the current level of muscle that they already have. Next, we have minimum effective volume. This refers to the minimum amount of volume required to see any muscle growth. This won't allow trainees to achieve maximal muscle growth, but it will still allow some progress to be made. If we continue to increase volume beyond minimum effective volume, we end up at maximum adaptive volume. This is the volume that results in the best hypertrophic response. And lastly, we have maximum recoverable volume. This is the maximum amount of volume that can be recovered from. So once we reach this point, the volume is too high for the trainee to actually recover and adapt to the hypertrophic stimulus. Now that we understand the general volume-hypertrophy relationship that exists for each muscle group, we now need to look at local versus systemic volume capacity. The relationship that was just described is based on an individual muscle group being trained. However, we generally train all muscle groups simultaneously to grow all muscles of the body. Because of this, the systemic recovery capacity is actually less than the sum of the individual muscles' recovery capacity. So we can't actually train all muscles at their maximum adaptive volume at the same time, because this will breach our systemic recovery limit. Now that we have established how volume influences hypertrophy, we now need to understand how muscle growth can actually be assessed, and how this relates to volume. Muscle growth is a very slow process that can take years to see noticeable adaptations. This makes it a very difficult adaptation to measure directly over short time frames. Also, the only accurate ways to measure muscle growth in the short term are through methods only usually available in research labs like DEXA scans, ultrasound, and MRI. So how can trainees assess muscle growth themselves? Unfortunately, there is no easy way to do so. Rather, trainees need to use multiple indirect measures of progress to assess muscle growth. The simplest and easiest way to do this is by using lifting performance. If trainees are improving their strength in the 6 to 20 rep range over time, then they are likely gaining muscle. This is because after the initial neural adaptations occur, strength is primarily driven by increases in muscle size. So once a trainee can perform a certain exercise efficiently, if they see increases in performance over time, there is a good chance they are inducing hypertrophy adaptations. Depending on how experienced the trainee is, this progress may be seen from week to week, month to month, or it may even take multiple months to see notable progress for advanced lifters. Now we can explore how much volume is best for hypertrophy gains. We can determine the best volume ranges for ourselves by using performance as a gauge. Let's explore some examples of how we can use performance to gauge volume requirements. As we can see here, we have a standard 6-day per week training mesocycle following a push-pull leg split. We have the loads and reps in reserve already prescribed. Now we need to figure out how many sets are best to train with. Let's use the chest muscle as an example to determine volume requirements. Here we have isolated the chest training from Monday and Thursday. We can see here that each session uses 3 sets for the dumbbell bench press and 2 sets of cable flies, accumulating a total of 10 sets for the chest over the week. Week 1 uses a lower number of sets as this is a deload, where the goal is to reduce accumulated fatigue. We can also see here that a close proximity to failure has been prescribed of 1 to 2 reps in reserve for the dumbbell bench press and 0 to 1 reps in reserve for the cable flies. We will also assume that technique is effective and consistent with every set. Over a 4-week mesocycle, let's say the trainee performs the following reps with the given loads. As we can see here, there is some slight fluctuations in performance, but no consistent trend that performance is actually improving over time. Let's say the trainee performs the same mesocycle once again, and there is still no obvious trends in performance. If the trainee feels well recovered and hardly ever sore in the chest in the following days after training, then this volume is probably somewhere around maintenance or minimum effective volume. So this trainee can probably benefit from increasing volume to see progress. So let's say this trainee now increases their volume by performing 4 sets of dumbbell bench press and 4 sets of cable flies each session, for a total of 16 sets per week. Now their performance over a 4-week mesocycle looks like this. As we can see here, we can see slow but consistent improvements in rep performance over the mesocycle. Each week the trainee is improving by 1 or 2 reps here and there. If the trainee experiences some slight muscle soreness the day after training the chest, but feels systemically well recovered, then this is a good indication that the trainee is probably training the chest somewhere around maximum adaptive volume, plus or minus a few sets. Let's say that this trainee now wants to experiment with an even higher training volume now that they have seen the benefits from increasing volume. So now 6 sets of dumbbell bench press are performed and 5 sets of cable flies, for a total of 22 sets for the chest per week. Performance over the mesocycle may look something like this. We can see here that once again there is no real changes in performance over the mesocycle, and actually a slight decrease in rep performance over time. The trainee also feels some slight dull aches in the shoulders through certain movements during the day. This is a good indication that volume is probably around or beyond maximum recoverable volume. This could be either from a systemic standpoint, meaning that the total amount of volume that is performed for the entire body over the week is too high, or it could mean that too much volume is being performed for the chest muscles themselves. So clearly, this example trainee saw the best performance using a volume of around 16 sets per week for the chest. They can then experiment with performing 1 to 2 more weekly sets or 1 to 2 less sets to see if they experience an even better result. So we can determine that this trainee will probably see the most chest muscle growth using somewhere between 14 to 18 sets per week. This same process should be performed with each muscle group to determine what volume results in the best performance response. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something out of this video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already.